This episode is brought to you by
Cry Havoc, from New York Times #1 best-selling author Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Rees thriller. Order now.
Battling his inner demons on a last chance road to redemption, Adam had one goal: to become the best of the best, a U.S. Navy SEAL. Adam Brown was a devoted man who was an unlikely hero, but a true warrior, described by all who knew him as fearless.
If the world stopped turning tomorrow, if it all fell into the sea, I'd let it sink to the bottom, 'cause I only care about one thing, you know. None of it matters as much as you matter to me.
Adam will always be a hero. Always the first to volunteer for the most dangerous assignments, Adam's final act of bravery led to the ultimate sacrifice.
If everything changed, I'd say the same. Through any heartbreak, my love will remain.
Fearless is the story of a man of extremes, whose courage and determination was fueled by faith, family, and the love of a woman.
You know, no, none of it matters as much as you matter to me. No, none of it matters as much as you matter to me.
Well, part of this is it's book club podcast, part of my thing. My reason for doing this is I want more people to read. I want to create more readers. And when I do the regular podcast, part of that is people learning about a book for the first time. And, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll get it, or something like that. This, the opposite, is meant to let everyone know a month ahead of time. Everybody get Fearless, read Fearless. And at the end of the month, I'll sit down with the author. We'll talk about it. And then but you'll be on this reading journey for the year. And you'll read at least 12 books for the year then. If you join the book club and stay with me for this year, you'll read 12 books together and go behind the scenes by talking to the author. So that's kind of the difference between the book club and the regular podcast.
Right. No, that's great. I looked back and looked at some of your original ones. Like, who was it that was like your original inspiration? I watched that actually day before yesterday, and
David Morrell.
Yeah.
So we just did that
bookshelf
one
behind him, and like the just his story, and just how it's just another storyteller. You know, you almost can complete each other's sentences. You have to remember you're on a podcast.
Yeah. It's so much fun talking to him. We always have a great time together, and what an amazing, kind person. But I also reread everything in preparation for the podcast, and so I wanted to revisit that, even though I know the story and knew Adam, and my trident is pounded into his coffin, but it was so difficult to go back and revisit all of those things, those emotions. Because like I said, it's such a powerful book. You did such an amazing job, such a respectful job. And it is, and this isn't just me saying, I hear this from team guys, from SEALs, all the time, that when someone asks them, what book should I read about the SEAL teams? This is the one that they recommend. It's the one that I recommend, just because it is so different than a SEAL book. And Adam's story is so powerful, no matter if you want to go into special operations or not, no matter what you're going to do in life.
Right.
And you just did such an amazing job with it. Anyway, it's very powerful to go back and revisit this. So I did, but as I was doing that, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't possibly bring up or read sections of it during the podcast, because I'll just be a complete mess. Adam was such a special person.
More people have written me, men, women, mostly men, honestly, that are telling me about being on an airplane flight or something where they've had to literally excuse themselves and go to the bathroom to sob.
Yeah.
Or people, you doing okay? Are you all right? And
Yeah.
one person actually told me that the person next to him said it, the way you're like convulsing right now, did you lose somebody? And he said, I kind of lost somebody when I just got to this part of this book. And it was, and this was a big burly dude at a book signing that said this. And yeah, no, I mean, that's more than anything that's come up. And, you know, it's Adam's story. I was blessed to be able to tell the story, but to pick all the parts that conveyed all of what Adam was, there's so much, so much. But to just pick and choose the right anecdotes. And there's some that aren't in the book, so we can talk about that as well.
Yes, I know there's a lot that aren't in the book.
You know how that goes.
Of reasons, if you knew Adam.
So I know that you've been so awesome for just keeping the story alive, and I'm just so grateful, because it is by far I put it this way: if I got hit by a truck tomorrow, my life would be complete in great part because I was able to write this story. It's just touched so many people's hearts.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, so I tried to go back to it for this, and it's the reason I'm not going to read a bunch of portions is because I won't be able to hold it together. People talking about him, his own words, your words. I will not be able to hold it together if I do that. So there's like two that are pretty safe that I marked. But it's so powerful. But then also I knew this, but I hadn't revisited it in a long time. It seems like one day has passed since we first met over a decade ago, but it's really been all these years.
Buzz.
Yeah, that's right. I remember. I was either leaving and you were coming in, and we were like, and then I was going to turn around and come back for. What event was it? Do you remember? Was it a graduation? Was it a Buds?
I think that was when I actually was there. It was for a graduation.
Okay.
And I think chaplain, was it Freiberg possibly? It was the chaplain, and he had just walked me through a part where they had John Foss's letter that he read at Adam's memorial service, and it's on the wall. And we had just read that, and we were walking across, and he saw you across the way and said, "I have to introduce you to."
Oh wow, yeah.
You.
Oh man. Well, gosh, the other part of this though is that the way you started, obviously talking about who you interviewed. And me, of course, seeing those names and knowing that a couple months after you interviewed them, that they would not be with us anymore because they were on Extortion 17.
Literally, I have that whole story as well, and it's in the back of the book. But that is, and I'll chat with you about that. I might reveal something in this. I'm thinking about writing a little bit of a follow up.
Oh wow! Okay.
At some point.
Yeah. I want to ask you about that for sure. Yeah. But you don't say in the prologue that these guys aren't with us anymore. You just say they're just here. Here's what someone said about Adam, and here's who it was. And of course, I know the names and I know a lot of those guys. And,
immediately.
And I know, oh geez, and I'm going back to revisit this whole thing.
With Fearless, it's always nice to kind of recap or kind of refresh the memory. And I was finding the photos when I was first introduced to their family, and I realized I started doing the research pretty much exactly a year after Adam had passed away. So it was very fresh for the family. The kids, Savannah was 8 years old and Nathan was 10 years old. And now they're out of college.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Introducing the BCM Mark 15 timepiece. Rugged, purpose-built, American design, Swiss made. Engineered for precision and unwavering reliability. A flat sapphire crystal with dual-layer anti-reflective coating ensures clarity under any conditions. Its unidirectional 60-minute bezel delivers dependable performance when timing counts. Equipped with a satin stainless steel bracelet featuring a secure deployment clasp. Super Luminova X1 illuminates the hands, numerals, and hour markers, offering visibility you can trust. With 200 meters of water resistance, the Mark 15 is built to endure. Each model is limited to just 200 pieces worldwide. Available now at BravoCompanyUSA.com.
So I said I wasn't going to read too many sections of Fearless because it's so personal. But I will read this one from the first chapter, first line, Foundations, after the prologue, where you quote a bunch of people who are not with us anymore. But this is how it starts here. When Adam Brown woke up on March 17th, 2010, he didn't know he would die that night in the Hindu Kush mountains of Afghanistan, but he was ready. Almost couldn't get through that one, so I'm definitely not going to read any longer portions. How did this come about?
So many things. I'm getting chills, and I get choked up hearing you read it. Believe it or not, that was the first line that I typed when I sat down to write this book, and it remained the opening line. And you know how tough that doesn't happen, but it was literally the first line of the book that I typed. And I give all credit in this particular book to a guy named Rick Stewart, who was he was doing these, they were called Patriot Profiles for the NRA. Yep. And he had met Adam and doing things with, as he was at the time would say, with this unnamed SEAL team. And he was also doing different, just Patriot Profiles on those who serve, honoring those who serve. And they were all videos based. And he did one on people that were using horseback riding for helping, to those with PTSD or in some cases traumatic brain injuries in particular. Anyways, he was doing this, and this guy named Mag or Gilbert Magallanes, and he was doing this for his recovery and therapy for a traumatic brain injury. And this was a guy that I had written about in The Only Thing Worth Dying For. And as he was doing this with Rick was chatting with him. He said, well, hey, Rick, there's a book about my mission in Afghanistan by this guy named Eric Blehm. And around that same time, and he basically said, yeah, he's not military, but he writes it. He liked it because he said, I made things accessible because I was, and he said that I was, by writing the story, he said, I could have sworn he was there with us after I read the book. And that's the greatest, compliment anybody can tell you if you're especially an outsider, which I am. And so anyways, he told Rick about me, and about the same time, Rick had been talking with Adam Brown's parents, and he knew that they wanted to have the story told, his famous, last written request where if anyone tells my story, tell my whole story, don't candy coat it, don't tell the story of only that I was this hero and a SEAL. Talk about the time in my life when I was this dirtbag living in the gutter, stealing from my own family, crack addict, and before obviously we know that's a redemption story. He was a great man of faith. He was a Christian. So he wanted people to know, that before he, found the Lord, and his wife, Kelly. And so all these things were that Rick knew about. And so Rick honestly did a kind of a blind date. He told me the family is interested in having you write the story. And I think he told the family the same exact thing. We have a writer that is, perfect for the job after he had read The Only Thing Worth Dying For. And that's how he put us together. We had a meal, and a whole bunch of crazy things happened that made them want to tell the story. I mean, did you read about that back? All the number 24?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. And it's, if you want to, however you want to look at it, depending on your beliefs, it's crazy that it all came together. You want me to tell that story?
Yeah, please do.
So I met with the family, Adam Brown's family, at a really nice restaurant, and the type that requires you to wear a coat. So I borrowed one, and I showed up, and they had, not unbeknownst to me beforehand, they had said that they prayed to see if this person is the right person to tell Adam's story. Well, Adam's favorite number, high school jersey number, was 24. His favorite number through his whole life. His secret codes for his PIN numbers were 24, 24. 24 was his number. And when I went into the restaurant and they gave me the coat check, they coat checked me number 24. And so and I didn't know, but they whispered something, and that was the first little thing for them. They thought, oh, that's cool. Then they met me and liked me, and we just got along. And I told them that I really want to honor his story. I really want to tell it the truth. And what I think they liked is I told them, I said, I know there's a lot of dark stuff in Adam's past. And they said, well, that's interesting because we call that the dark time for Adam. And there was that connection. And I said, well, in my mind, you can't really understand. You cannot show someone how high they flew unless you show them, the reader, how far they've fallen. And so if you want to go there with this, I will do it honorably. So I told him that. After the dinner, we went back to the hotel where we all had reservations in advance. I had come straight from the airport, and they checked in. Well, Kelly checked into her room, and they put her in room 24 on the 24th floor. And so she immediately thought, well, this is crazy. And then so I got that. Then the next day, they show Adam's little documentary that Rick put together, and we met Ted Nugent, and she told Ted Nugent, "Hey, this is Eric Blehm. He's going to be the guy that writes Adam's story." It was after the documentary, and he said, "Oh, really?" He said, "That's amazing. I'd like to meet you," and this and that. He gave me his card. He said, "When the book's out, send me a copy." Put it in my pocket. On the way home from that whole trip, first of all, I told my agent, I said, I have this story about a Navy SEAL. I know I just sold another book. I was under contract. And I said, I want to get out of this other book deal, and I want to write this story. And she said, well, Eric, there's not a lot going on with SEAL. There was a flood of SEAL books for a while, and now there was, something big in the world is going to happen to make a publisher really want to get behind a SEAL book right now. So I did that, got on the flight, get off the plane in San Diego, or I'm flying to get off the plane, and I pulled a card out. Well, the card, his address, Ted Nugent's address, was 2424.
Wow.
That was the number on the street. So that happened. And then I get off the plane, and everybody's around the TVs, and Osama bin Laden had just been killed in Pakistan. And I have a message from Kelly Brown, and she said, that was Adam's team. I called my agent. She said, put together a proposal as fast as you can. We'll see what we can do. And that's how it all came together.
Wow. Jeez. Yeah, they got on the phone. We need some SEAL books after that. Oh, man.
Well, I mean, everybody wanted an angle of a SEAL book. And mine was very different, though, right? It was very much about it wasn't about, as John Foss said, there's enough shoot 'em up, bang, bang training videos. There's not enough humanity. And, his quote to me was, it's in the book. He said, there's enough of that. He said, you're going to find a whole lot of humanity in Adam Brown.
Yep. And, right there in the preface.
Yeah. And that's verbatim. That's quoted. That's me sitting there with my notebook, sitting here having dinner in Virginia Beach with all those guys.
Wow. And that would, a lot of those guys would be on Extortion 1-7 just a few months later. The book starts with a quote from Ernest Hemingway. There is no hunting like the hunting of man, and those who have hunted armed men long enough and liked it never care for anything else thereafter. Savage Son, the third novel in my James Reese Terminal List series, is a novel that I've wanted to write since the 6th grade, when we read a short story called The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Connell, first published in 1924. That is really a book about the dark side of man, told through the dynamic of hunter and hunted. And even back then, at 11 years old, I told myself that one day, when I got out of the military, I would write a modern-day thriller that paid tribute to that short story. And I wanted it to be my first novel. But as I put all these different ideas down on the table, it was very clear to me that I needed to start with the Terminal List, because the characters weren't yet to a place where I could explore the themes that I explore in Savage Son. So wrote the Terminal List, and still at the end of the Terminal List, James Reese wasn't quite there yet. Then he goes through this story of violent redemption in True Believer, and at the end of True Believer, I knew that he was now at a place where I could explore the themes of Savage Son. Book number 3. All right, there are a lot of different weapons, pistols, rifles, shotguns, blades, all sorts of things in the pages of my novels. And in Savage Son, he carries P320. And in this passage right here, you always wanted to live in Robin's guest house, Rafe smiled, referring to his father's middle name and knowing his friend would get it. I'm sure he'll put you to work sooner or later and make you earn your keep. So if I were you, I'd play sick for as long as possible. Good tip. Reach under the seat. Reese reached down and pulled out a SIG P320X Compact in a Black Point Tactical mini-wing holster. Maddo thought that might come in handy, Rafe said, referring to their former Command Master Chief, who now ran the training academy for 6 Hour.
Does everyone know I'm back? Reese asked. You know this community, brother, Rafe said with a smile. We're worse than old ladies in a sewing circle. So in Savage Son, James Reese picks up the SIG P320 X Compact right here. But if there were some other versions available, like this right here, and this is a P320, but it is customized by the guys at True Precision. Look at that. Now that is a sweet pistol. So maybe he would have carried something like this had I known about them back then, or perhaps something from the custom shop. You can go on the Sig Sauer website and check out their custom shop and make something like this right here. So that's a P365, and you can go on there and choose the grip mod, you can choose the barrel, the slide, the magazine, the optic, and build yourself a custom pistol just like this one. So if that had existed back then, that might have been in James Reese's hands as well.
So maybe we'll start at the beginning then. Just how you start the book. What happened that night that Adam died?
Adam was on what I was told by numerous people, higher command, whatnot, was one of the most audacious missions that they got. You know, it was DevGru, it was SEAL Team 6, the toughest missions. A lot of people said it was even tougher and gnarlier than the mission into Pakistan, going across a border, international border, because it was unique in that you weren't able to fly in and fast rope in or right there close. You couldn't come in on any sort of vehicle. You had to hike in from a long distance. It was up in the mountains, and they were going after a leader, insurgent leader that had been basically killing Americans and all the bases in the oh my gosh, the Pesh River Valley. And they knew that this guy was going to continue killing Americans if they couldn't take him out. Well, they found out where he was, and they had a short period of time because this guy was moving a lot, and they had to go in, and without giving away that what happens, Adam ends up putting himself in harm's way in order to accomplish the mission and keep his fellow brothers on his team out of harm's way. And in doing so, he was mortally wounded.
And what did you think made Adam such an extraordinary individual? And you saw this when you talked to anybody that knew him. People talk about Adam differently than they talk about other people. And that's always stood out to me. We were at SEAL Team 2 together, went to Iraq together, and he was always getting hurt in one way or another. He loses his eye. We can talk a little bit about that. It's in the book, obviously. But people talked about him even back then, not just after he passed away, but even when he was alive, talked about him differently. And then even more so after his passing. And you got to see that firsthand coming in. And I'm just wondering what your impressions are of that and what your impressions were of Adam as you got to know him through his friends, family, and teammates.
I think what made Adam really stand out is that he was, well, first of all, everybody has an impression of a SEAL, I think. And Adam was straight up nice and straight up goofy as well. But at the same time, he was tough as nails. And and he was just genuinely a nice guy. And I think that the fact that he was a guy that always said, I got it. And I think that, at that level, he wasn't into hazing the young guys necessarily. He'd help them. He wouldn't feel right hazing somebody. He'd go take the trash out with some kid versus telling him to go do it. And that to me is there was this almost a ribbing and there was both a reverence and just a hilarious. Everybody had a funny story about Adam. I mean, they called him Blade because he was trying to pull cut a zip tie off of a Zodiac, watercraft, and he was pulling it towards himself and nailed himself between the eyes with with his knife, and he's bleeding like crazy. And one of the guys on the boat says, the guy's in charge, the commander says, "Okay, bro, over the side, go get the," they're doing a thing where they're collecting mines or something, and he was joking, and Adam just flipped over backwards and went and did it. Sharks or whatever be damned. I'm bleeding like crazy, and he's jumping in. So he just never quit. And to have a name like Blade is just so almost it's so tough but so funny if you know the name behind it. And the fact that Adam just was like, he was a Jedi. He was this guy, just for, we're just talking along here, and a lot of your listeners don't know the story, but he really was this guy that overcame so much. People couldn't believe he kept going. And he and his wife would have this idea, hey, they're Christian, they're religious. Are all these injuries, are they telling me, that, his wife would think, is this something that's telling you that maybe you should quit? And she's like, no, it's telling me I'm not done yet. It's just another hurdle I have to get over, which shows, he was wired different. He lost his right eye, his dominant right eye, in a training incident. He got the fingers on his dominant right hand crushed off. And what does he do? Teaches himself to shoot left-handed, non-dominant eye in the kill houses, in close combat situations, and qualified for Green Team, for SEAL Team 6, with those things hampering. Most people couldn't do it with everything perfect. And I think that is what, one of my favorite quotes was when I spoke to the armorer, and he said, he remembered telling Adam, come on, Adam, come clean. You're a Jedi, right? And Adam said, he just shrugged his shoulders and said, nah, I just pray a lot. That was his response. And it was no big deal. And yeah. Those little quotes when you're interviewing people, as you know, I mean, you've done it as well for your research, but there's certain lines that come up. I used to say, when I used to only take notes, I say the quotes that make you look up. Like you're walking, then you just look up and you just know that's going in the book. I'm using that. And that was one of those instances where, wow, that's perfect. I love it. It's going in the book, no doubt. And there were so many of those with Adam, though. So many, where to tell this story of this guy who really, came back from this dark place where he was a crack addict. As bad as his family thought they were going to phone call one day that he was dead in the gutter from an overdose, or, shot from robbing somebody or something like that. And to come back from that and have that, just wherewithal and this goal to just make something of himself. He knew there was a purpose for him. And honestly, the other hero in the story was Kelly. Kelly knew there was something in him. And there were plenty of SEALs that know the story, or that didn't even know about Adam's past when he passed away. And then they heard about it and they're all, I can't believe Kelly put up with it, And then, but so she is definitely, there's two heroes in this story. There'll be two heroes when it becomes a movie, let's say, there's going to be two leading roles. Yeah. And Kelly was by far the one that kept reminding Adam that you're here for a purpose. This is not you. This is you.
Incredible. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Then just like you said, he wanted the dark time told if anyone was to ever tell his story.
Right.
That's, it's also, everything is so extraordinary.
That's the most fearless thing he did, I believe. He was fearless in so many ways, but the most fearless thing, I think, was that. Yeah. We all have we all have things that we don't want anybody to know about. All of us, everybody. And he basically bared his soul and the worst parts of him, because I believe, and Kelly, that he sensed that there are people that needed that would help people. And my God, it has. He's helped so many people.
Yeah. Did you come up with the title through interviews and getting to know him, or did you get it from the last word was it the commanding officer or someone overseas that sent out that email to everybody in the wake of Adam's death, and the last word on it is fearless?
When I went to, first of all, I knew about this basic story when Rick Stewart invited me to go to Pittsburgh. I met him. He got me at the airport. We went to his hotel room, actually, and he showed me his video. And I watched the video that he was going to show the next day. And it starts with Savannah Brown and his 8-year-old daughter saying, my dad was a crazy wild guy and I mean, I started crying immediately right then.
Yeah. Because
I know this is about her dad, and he's dead, and she's talking about him knowing this. And then as it went through the interviews that Rick put together, I can't remember exactly if there was a quote in there specifically that said that, but I finished that movie. It was about a 20-minute, I think, documentary, maybe like 15 or 20-minute. And I looked at Rick and I said, I would love to write this book. And I said, you know what I'd call it? Fearless.
Wow.
Right then, before I'd read any of the other research or anything. So I'm sure there was something in there that said fearless. I think some of the people in there were saying he was fearless.
Yeah.
And that's when I said it right then and there. And it's interesting, but the book, the people, as you know, a lot goes into a book cover, title and a subtitle. And the subtitle was all about we want SEAL Team 6 in the subtitle. We want this, we want that in the subtitle. And when the people, to their credit, at the publisher, Waterbrook Multnomah, which was part of Penguin Random House, they came back after they read it and they said, we got to get Adam Brown's name on this. He's going to be a legend. And so we changed it to that. And also with, I don't think Team SEAL Team 6 is even on the cover.
Yeah, it's on this one anyway. Maybe they changed it on future ones.
Okay. No. Okay. So it was SEAL Team 6, but the Adam Brown, originally it just said a Navy SEAL from SEAL Team 6. That was it.
Okay.
And I kept telling him, actually, I tried to fight for his name on it. And they're, well, no one's going to know who Adam Brown is. And then when they read it, they were very touched and they just said, no, we want his name on the title, on the cover. So that's how it came together with that particular subtitle. And yeah, it was just immediately, I think a lot of people really resonated with it. Yeah. I think it resonated with a lot of people.
Oh yeah, certainly does. Like I said, so powerful.
When it says staccato, it comes with a promise. In any condition, at any moment, this gun is ready because your life and the lives you protect depend on it. The future of the 2011 begins with the HD line. Narrower grip with no grip safety. You can run your pistol in either hand with fully mirrored controls and ergonomics. Uses widely available, reliable magazines in a variety of capacities so you can stock up on more mags for less money. Allows common duty optics to be attached directly to the slide instead of to a plate. Staccato. Engineered for performance. Built for freedom.
And Adam's faith. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you found out about Adam's faith and the role that played in his life?
You couldn't avoid that with Adam, honestly. And it was interesting because I didn't grow up as a religious person myself. My mom died when I was 17 and I was baptized with her because she asked me to. But growing up before that, I think a lot of people find religion at that point in their life. She had cancer and passed away, and she asked myself and my brother to be baptized with her, and we did. But other than that, I don't think I even went back to church except for weddings and funerals for the rest of my life until this point. So I always had I would never say I'm an atheist. I believe in God, a greater power, but I wanted to be honest with Adam's family. And when I felt that was important because I knew that was a big part of Adam's life. And I told Larry, his dad, and his mom, and Kelly all at that dinner table. I said, by the way, I want you to know that I'm not an atheist or anything, but I'm not really religious. And they immediately said, that's great. I love that. You can get to know Adam and who he was. And you're on your own spiritual journey, but this won't come across as propaganda. If you're the author and you can just do it. And so I wanted to just tell a story that, some people are sadly off-put by if it's too religious, or they're going to be put off. And then on the other hand, if you don't put enough, the people who are the believer, they're going to think you're shying away from it. So I had to walk that line as well. And I just wanted to do a good job. In my mind, it's his biography. This is who he was. And I needed to stay true to that. And so I just really picked and chose to, there's the part in there where I found his testimony after he got out of drug rehab and spoke in front of the church was a really powerful part. And there were certain Bible verses that he loved. And I used lots of bits of his letters and things that, he wrote to his kids. It was very, very clear. I think my favorite line in the whole book is early on in the middle where he says, I'm not afraid of anything that might happen to me on this earth because no one can take my spirit from me. And he wrote that to his kids. And it doesn't get there's nothing more beautiful than that right there to tell the story of Adam's faith I believe, I was honored to tell it and tell it like it happened. And anybody that, you can read the reviews, and there's some people will say, "Oh, look at this Bible thumping author preaching his religion," and I'm like, it just you can't help it. There's always people that bring their own baggage into a book, and some people do that, and there's a few people like that, but for the most part, everybody said, I walked the line and just told the story like it is. And again, Adam's faith was who he was, and you could not avoid it. It would be disingenuous and wrong, straight up wrong, not to have that in this story. It's where he found his strength.
Yeah. And that's actually a quote that I have. I was going to read at the end, is that exact one that then letter to his kids. I have it right.
Sorry to take your
thunder. No. It's so powerful.
It is.
And and on those reviews, I think I read reviews or skimmed through reviews because I was curious at the beginning. Yeah. So first book, second book, and then not really after that. I'd read them so I could pull out. I used to do kind of like reading mean tweets or whatever. I'd read bad reviews, and I used to read those every now and again, and I don't do it anymore. But I did for a couple books, but the only reason I would go back and look at reviews would be to grab those bad ones out so I could read them and kind of respond to them in a funny way, just kind of make use of them.
Absolutely.
And sometimes the bad reviews actually, because someone will read a review and it'll say something along the lines of, this book is too violent, too much gear, too much tactics, and that's selling it to somebody else. Someone's like, "Oh wow, that sounds great to me." So there's there's a positive side of the bad ones as well, but I don't read them anymore at all.
Now at this point, I think there's like 10,000 reviews, and it's like 90% 5 stars, which is I'm just so humbled by that. And it's Adam's story, but it is kind of funny. There are some people who would talk about the rough language, because this is a book about seals, and you're going to have some rough language in there. And I remember at one point, a funny story, when I was going through the editing, because they wanted this book to be well received by the Christian bookstores, and they're very careful about rough language. And I'm like, well, I can't avoid it. I'm not going to, there's certain things that are going to happen. And there's one scene where Adam's gloves are on fire, literally. And he basically spouts off like, bleep, whatever. And I'm true to what this guy recounted it. And someone, I remember the editor said, "Is there any way you could say, I don't know, like," I'm like, "No, you can't say, oh darn, my hands are on fire." And so I really tried to all the way
around. That's not going to work. Yeah.
Be true to the character and be true to the moment and the stories, and it's very authentic, and that's I'm happy with it. And it's at the end of the day, I think that it's pretty balanced. I think at the end of the day, for any reader, I've thought about actually putting, and we've talked about putting together more of a young reader's version of this, because there really is a lot to learn from Adam's younger years. He was a guy who asked the wallflowers to dance. He had a friend there was a kid who had Down syndrome, and he made it a point to befriend him at a young age and stood up for him. I think the coolest story of his character was his high school football coach, who said Adam was this tiny freshman. He said he looked like he had like an orange on the end of a toothpick, for a helmet. He was all helmet. And it was Adam when they would do this drill called Blood Alley, where they would line up and go head to head, and they'd blow the whistle and they'd bowl into each other. And he was the first one to raise his hand. Most of the little guys would be in the back like, "God, please don't call on me." And he would always say, "Come on, coach, call on me." And he'd be up against the linebacker or whoever. And the coach, I feel bad, I can't remember all their names, but the coach who I interviewed was telling me that, and again, another quote in the book, whereas they were walking away after that day and with his other fellow coaches, this is the Friday Night Lights, Arkansas football is everything. And he said, that little freshman just taught our whole team more about character this afternoon that we could have ever done. And it was in that moment that, he was born as a hero at such a young age, and didn't even need to, just this fired up kid that just was all in. Wow.
In those interviews, particularly of Adam's teammates that you conducted, when you think back on those interviews and the time you got to spend with those guys, is there a memory that stands out to you the most, that you keep going back to, or what stands out to you about those guys that you interviewed about Adam for this project?
Oh my gosh. I'm I'm haunted by those interviews. Um, I mean, I went camping with my family, and I was out in a place where no phone cell coverage, and I came back and I was driving down from Sequoia Kings Canyon, and my phone blew up, and I had all these messages, and that's when I actually called, of all people. The first person I called was Rick Stewart, and I knew, because I'd gone through this, before, and I just knew that these guys had all gone on this deployment, and so it's kind of hard to it's kind of hard to bring it up even now, honestly.
Yeah, it's hard to read, knowing.
But I asked him, I said, what happened? Did something happen to one of the guys? And his response was, it happened to all of them.
Those are some amazing human beings.
I'm sorry.
No, those are some amazing human beings, and believe me, I've reading the prologue, and I was the same way.
So that story, the story that comes back to me the most, that I've come back to, is that I remember the most, and I actually wrote about it, I think a year later, was the well, two or three of them said something similar, but Juicy, Kevin Houston, said, first of all, these guys, I can say it now, but they didn't get public affairs permission to talk to me. And they were told not to talk to any journalists at that period of time, because everybody wanted to know about Osama bin Laden and the kill mission, in Pakistan. I didn't care. I was there to tell Adam's story. And they were all about to deploy. This was his, squadron and team that was with him when he died, and they were critical to tell the story. And they did a lot of soul searching to talk to me, because they were about ready to deploy. And Juicy in particular said, I could get killed on my next mission, and I want to do Adam right. So let's get this done. And he said that I think, and it's just like, it's just like in the book, where he said, I said, where should we start? Because I wanted to be respectful. And he said, let's just start with March 17th, 2010. Let's get that out of the way. And so he started with the end, which was very interesting as a storyteller. And he also said, he was the one also who told me, whatever you do, don't start this book at Buds.
Yeah.
That's so cliche. Another one that comes back to me more and more is Heath Robinson, who really wasn't even a close friend of Adam's, at all. He made that clear to me when I talked to him. He said, we and Adam were not, in fact, if anything, we butted heads at times. We were not the best of friends, but we both respected each other. And he said that he was the one who talked about how, having seen a lot of people in battle die, and how he said in more detail, I mean, more now, in my mind, I totally remember. He basically said there's a lot of people that wish that I'm pretty sure if they had a second chance, they'd want a do-over. They did not die well. And he really had a hard time, and he really did. He broke down, and he was just had a really tough time getting through it. And I said, we don't need to go there. And he said, no, this is important. I want to take you there. And he walked me through that entire very end, which is very traumatic, and you can read about it, obviously. And there's kind of a little bit of a twist in there that is a gut wrencher, as when they're cutting off his clothing. But he said at the end, the last thing that he got out in that conversation, Heath, was Adam died well. Yeah. So if you can imagine these guys, oh, is that another? Am I pulling out the stuff that you wanted to say?
No, I mean, it's coming naturally. That's it was so powerful. And I
mean, those. I got to tell you, I mean, what I've thought of writing is literally haunted by heroes, because there's so much more in those interviews, because these guys, they deflected so much about themselves to honor Adam. They wanted his story told. But at the same time, I thought that was so telling, because they were all about honoring their brother. and it wasn't hard. And they honored him by being honest. There's a lot of funny stuff in there. He was, like I said, it's that sweet and salty, bittersweet that's the best thing. Bittersweet is the best flavor in any book, in any story. And he really, really, there was just no lack of both, of either. And so some of these things that these guys said, I mean, to know, when Rat spoke with me, Thomas Ratzlaff, he said, before every mission, I, say the Lord's Prayer. And he has a prayer, not for myself, but for these other guys, because I'm taking care of them. I have all this, and that all, then I knew exactly what was going on with him for Extortion 17 when they were killed later. And so I was able to reconstruct in my mind what probably occurred. But I don't know. I just feel like there's more to it. There's also more to what they did to get Adam out of there. That's a pretty short section in the book because we didn't want the book to be too long. First of all, we wanted to keep the momentum going, as you talked about with the thrillers and Lee Child and what you guys do so well with your type of writing. We wanted to keep driving it forward, but I found out more about that, and I know so much more that went on that I feel like it would honor those guys to show a little bit more of that. So I've thought about kind of doing a kind of a thing like that. I just would never want it to be like a self-serving, like I'm going to do another book because everybody loves this. So I've toiled with it for a long time, but at some point I think I might do that, and and I would call it Haunted by Heroes. It would be more of a memoirish type story.
That title is certainly fitting and powerful, and I hope you do it.
I when I tell it to people, I'm slipping it to you for curious what your reaction is. A few people have told me you should do this. One of them was the chaplain there at Bud's as well. He told me several times to do it, and a few people have written me back, Adam's old buddy, hey, are you going to write that book? I'm like, well, maybe. And I can't believe it's already been 12 years it's been out or more, 13 years.
Can you believe that?
And it's still there. But it's it's just such a different story because I think it shows the humanity and the life that all of you live to do what you do, and Adam's ability to flip the switch to be this great dad. The thing that I learned most from Adam was told to me from the character. I think I got to be careful because some characters were still operating, and I changed so many names that I only have their names from the book. But one of the characters, I'll just leave it at that, had said that, what Adam taught me? He said that he'd go play with his kids at the park. He didn't take his kids to the park to play. And he said, there's a difference.
Wow.
And that was really strong to me. Wow. And in my life at that time, and, I have a son that's just left home for the first time. It's been a rough few months here.
Yeah.
So he taught me a lot, Adam.
Yeah, you teach everyone a lot through this book, and I mean, people can see how emotional we both are here. And even if you don't know Adam at all, and you pick up this book and you start reading it, just like the person whose story you related about being on the plane, reading this thing and losing it and having to go to the restroom and come back, and someone asking if he just lost somebody. And I mean, it'll do that to you. So I would say, don't read it on a plane. I would say,
don't read the end on the plane.
Take some quiet time and read it. It's very personal.
There's one thing that I've gone to a few times. There's one scene where where all his buddies come to where he jumped off the bridge to honor Adam. And I was writing that section. And when I wrote this book, I worked 6 days a week, 16-hour days for 9 months is what my schedule was. And my wife will attest, absolutely 100% accurate. Yeah. It was because they wanted it. I accepted it. We wanted this out as fast as possible. So I worked really hard to get that done. And in one situation, my wife was bringing dinner to my office, and she walked up and knocked on the door. And I was at the point in the story where they were getting ready to jump off, the bridge to honor Adam after he had been killed. So that's where I am in my mind, and my space was, and she walks in, and I'm sitting there at my desk bawling. I'm like, my eyes are just red and I'm crying, and I had just written the line, and they jumped, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to, how I was going to end that. how I was going to end that. I'm like, and they jumped, and I just said, for Adam. And I just broke down. And my wife knocks on the door and says, here's dinner. And you know what she said when she brought that in and she saw me crying? She goes, again? And that's a testament to, when you're writing a story yourself and it brings you to that, it's something special.
Yep.
And that happened multiple times. All I can say, and transcribing, if you can imagine, I was transcribing these interviews of these guys, and I had hours of interviews with each of them. So it was tough. It was a tough process, for sure, but so worthwhile. Like I said, it honors all of them. I mean, all of their spirits reside in the pages of that book. Adam's especially, but all of them, I think, are touched. Touched that book. I couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah.
I couldn't have. And they took a big leap by trusting me. And I did my due diligence to make sure I didn't put anything in there that shouldn't be, especially after. But and there was one who wouldn't. He just said at the end, he said, I can't. He was, and I may say someday, but he just said, I really want to talk to you. I really want to do this interview, but without approval, I just can't. And he shook my hand and he gave me a hug, and what he did say, he said, but you can use everything that I said at the memorial service, and you can just draw your own conclusions there, who that was. It's amazing.
Yeah, I was there, and oh man, and that memorial was, oh man, just thinking about it, even all these years later, it's just so.
His daughter sang.
That's right.
Proud to be an American. 8 years old. Yeah.
So in all these years since, or not all these years since, but you talked about looking at the reviews, early on when it came out, because you're curious how this is going to be received. And also going back to what you just said about knowing that you have something special when you're emotional writing it. And I think that's, I say that whenever I'm talking about writing, and that I know I'm on the right track when I'm emotional as I'm writing a book. And the fiction side, and my one experience on the nonfiction side now, it's happened in every book thus far, fiction and non.
Oh, you got me crying in Terminal List.
Well, yeah, but I'm writing it, I same thing, and then when I go back and edit, same thing, and so I know if that ever doesn't happen, then maybe I need to take a breath and then come back to it or something, or put it away and write another book or something. But so far, emotional in every single book that I have written in multiple times. So I think that's right. When you're feeling emotional and you're in it like that, you have something special.
Yeah, absolutely.
What kind of responses did you get from people who knew Adam when they got it? Friends, family, but teammates as well. What was the response once this is out there in the world and they read it front to back, and then they correspond with you? What were some of the responses?
I mean, I don't want it to sound like I'm patting myself on the back, honestly, but I was just so overwhelmed by thinking how positive the response was. I mean, so many people just said, you fucking nailed it. That was repeated many times. And that from his brothers, it was like that. And you can imagine, I mean, I'm not here to expose anybody. It's not an expose. I wanted to get it right. I let the family read it. And you can imagine, I was expecting to be on pins and needles for weeks. Well, I gave it to Larry and Janice, about this time of day, honestly, midday for me, 3:00 in the afternoon. They wrote me the next morning. They said they stayed up all night, read it. And they said, Eric, we love it. You did such an honorable job to honor Adam and our son. And we have a few requests of changes, but they're very minimal. And you can't even imagine the weight that was lifted when his parents said that. Mm-hmm. And that was the first thing. I gave it to him like at 3 p.m, and I got a call from him like 10:00 the next morning. They said they read until 4:30 in the morning, and read it like that. And that had to have been tough. I mean, I think his twin sister, Adam had a twin, Amanda. I don't think she's ever read the end. And Kelly read it, and Kelly ended up having to read it before the book came out to her kids, because if you can imagine, her kids had no idea that their dad had been in jail, had been a drug addict, and these things that, but she knew, and that, I think at one point one of them even said, no, no, Mr. Eric is lying, or this is a lie. She said that one of them said, because that's not my dad, and they didn't want to hear it. And she said, well, it's going to be in the public and you need to know because this is true, but it's going to help so many people because your daddy was so strong, and this is going to help give people strength and show his faith, and it's going to honor God. And it's, that was what she had to do. But if you can imagine, put yourself in your own shoes, and your spouse has died and your kids do not know about a very, very dark past, and then having to reveal that because it's going to be a public book. That's what she was up against. And I was at that point, I wish that could have been, the beginning of the story, honestly. But she, obviously was after it was all done and said, I might do that with a younger version of the book for younger people. But that's really what had to be, done. They had to, because people are going to talk. And sure enough, but I believe now at this point that they're all very, the kids have read it. They've been nothing but awesome. They're just too, I keep my distance. They have big enough boots to fill as it is. And I think they get so much attention and so many people have followed through and watched over them, I think, over the years. And I just feel like I did my part. Kelly says that Fearless for her is like The Notebook. Have you ever read The Notebook? It's Nicholas Sparks.
I know what it is, but I have not read it. But yes, I know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, basically, it's a story of a woman who she has what is it? I can't remember. It's Alzheimer's or something, where she doesn't know her life. She forgets her life, and she keeps going back to this notebook or her husband does, in order for her to relive her life. And so it's like a record of her life, but she doesn't even remember it herself. So this is like my notebook for our family.
Oh, man. What do you think Adam's story teaches anyone who's to pick this up? Not necessarily someone who wants to go in the military or special operations or anything like that, but what does Adam's story teach all of us? And what do you think Adam would want us to take from his story?
Redemption. It doesn't matter how deep of a hole you've fallen into, you can claw your way out of it. You can claw out and you can rise up. You can rise above your darkest hours. I remind myself, we all have dark moments. We all have, I think it was Henry David Thoreau who said, all men lead lives of quiet desperation. And you know what? All people do in general. We all have our dark moments. And I think Adam's story really is that. That's what makes it, I think, so universal. I think it's where it crosses genres of self-help, self-improvement, military, redemption, faith. It's got so many little messages in there, and you can find yourself in that story. I think that's what makes it so beautiful. If not in Adam's character, in the people that were surrounded him. And I think really what it does is it shows you that you can find yourself even in the dark. I mean, that's Adam did. He found himself, and he made himself. He was a hero. I mean, there are people who speculate that had he survived, would he have relapsed? I mean, he was crack addiction is something that your brain is programmed to crave for the rest of your life. Once you try it once, note to self, note to everybody, don't try crack. And it is something that, people will sometimes ponder and say that. I said, I'm not going to speculate anything, but the fact that he rose to the level that he did, to the top tier of the U.S. military, on a very dangerous mission, and rose above not only himself, not only his addictions, but these injuries that would have been career-ending injuries. He was offered medical discharge, and he said, no, I'm not going to take it. I'm not done yet. I am not done yet. God, how many of us need to hear that right now, today? I'm not done yet. I need to hear it.
Man, I love that. And movie news. I know there's been talk here and there over the years about it. Where does that stand now?
Oh man, I will believe it when I'm eating the popcorn.
Yeah.
But that's Hollywood.
Right.
We have an amazing team on it. It's been optioned by Relativity Media first for like 2 option 18-month periods. Then it went to MGM for 2 18-month periods. And now it's with Lionsgate. And Lionsgate is pretty well known for getting things over the finish line. You know, movies that have been stuck elsewhere for whatever reason. And along with Kingdom Story Company, Andy Irwin, he is a champion of this right now. Mark Ciardi, the producer he did Miracle Team, the original, hockey movie. He did Secretariat, $1 Million Arm, McFarland's USA. He's like a great producer of like inspirational comeback movies.
Yeah.
So all these, along with, let's say, potential actors who I can't mention.
It's always good never to mention, because then if it goes somewhere else and it's not that person, you'll get the question forever are you disappointed that it wasn't your first choice of an actor?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've heard that was some of the issues that happened at MGM. Whispers went here versus here, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work out. So in short, it's got a great team. I believe I had hoped that 2024 was the year. And it's really, really close. We have a great script, and the guy who adapted American Sniper was the screenwriter we brought on board. So we have the military angle, we have the faith angle with Kingdom Story Company, we have Lionsgate with this, studio that gets stuff over the finish line. Wow. We have all these elements together that I think are really close, and I get at least an email a week from somebody asking what's going on with the movie, which may not sound like a lot, but if you're getting that from someone's taken enough time to write a random reader to ask about a movie, there's a lot of more people thinking about it. So it's really, really close, but I can, again, I will always say with movies, from what I've learned in the past, I will believe it when I'm eating the popcorn.
Yeah.
But dang, I can smell it. I can smell the popcorn.
All right. And we talked earlier, you signed that one for me right there. What do you say? March 6th of 2013. And
yes.
Then this one here, signed by Kelly and the kids right here. But I don't really take this one off the shelf because they signed it, so I just leave this one sitting there. So if I need to reference it, I grabbed the one you signed
yes.
for me. But I grabbed this one for this, and I realized, so Kelly signed it, and she wrote Peter 5:10. And I realized that I had never gone to that Bible verse to read what that was. And I don't know why. I think that's because this is so... because I'd read it before I got this one, so I'd read it, and then I got this one, and this was the one that I wasn't gonna touch, and I saw this and put it away. The kids have signed it, like I said right there.
That's amazing.
But I went to 5:10, Peter 5:10, right before this, coming in here, and here it is. And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. That's what Kelly put in this book.
Wow.
Always strength will come from our suffering, is what that's essentially.
Yeah. And she has she's a strong woman.
Just incredible. And that letter to his kids that you mentioned earlier.
If you want to read that, I would be honored.
It's he writes this: it was not meant to be shared unless the worst happened. And this is what you write. In a letter to his children, not meant to be seen unless the worst happened, he wrote, I'm not afraid of anything that might happen to me on this earth, because I know no matter what, nothing can take my spirit from me. Yeah.
Amen.
Man, just incredible. All of this. And
well, thank you so much for introducing it to your readers and keeping his legacy alive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think most people will have, if they haven't read it, they know of it. It's probably already on their shelf, more so than most of the other books that I do as part of the book club. I would think. But if anybody hasn't, the hope is that they get this month, they've read it, and now they're listening to us discuss it here and get a little context, learn about what I hope you're going to do in the future, both the children's or young adult version and then Haunted by Heroes, to really tell more of the story of those guys who were shoulder to shoulder with Adam. Not just when he died, but throughout his time in the military. So I hope that you do that and go down that path. And I also want to thank you for doing this, because you honored his legacy, his family. You're helping so many people, not just people in the military, not just people who knew Adam, but you're going to help an entire generation of people. And Adam's going to have that influence, obviously long after his death, and it is going to help so many people through his story, and like you said, that story of redemption. So thank you for what you did here, for Adam, for his family, for all of us who knew him, and I just want to express my appreciation to you. So thank you.
Well, thank you again for having me here, and also just to, I remember sitting there and chatting with you, and you met kind of off the cuff saying, yeah, I'm gonna I really want to write, a book, maybe write a thriller or some thrillers after this. And I can't say how many times I've heard that, and all writers have heard that. And I believe it was, who was I with? I was with somebody that said, that guy's gonna do it. And I'm gonna just, since you just did that, and you can cut it off if you don't want, but I would love, because you just thanked me, but I was lucky enough to get a advanced reader copy from you when this came out, and I actually wrote a blurb for you. I think
you did. You were so kind.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that.
And what you wrote was, Eric, this was November 6th. You know what? Let me do something here.
Oh wow, November 6th, 2017. So you read it before 6th, Chris Pratt
2017, did. And it says, "Thank you for your friendship and for honoring my friend and teammate Adam with such an amazing portrayal of his life. Your dedication to the project will never be forgotten. Strength and honor."
Man,
and you sign
thank
it.
You.
And how cool is it? This full circle journey now.
That's wild. That is wild. And you read it before. If that's November 6th of 2017, I think you read it before. You definitely read it before Pratt read it. So Pratt read it end of December 2017. It came out March of 2018. So you were one of the first to read it. And like I said, now I don't even send galley copies out anymore. I think a couple sneak out from the publisher every now and again, but I tell them not to do it, because I don't like anything being out there that's not the best it can possibly be. And the galley copies, there's always you're gonna keep editing, you're gonna find some things and make some changes before the actual hardcover comes out. So I don't even send those out anymore. But yeah, you have one of the originals.
And you returned the favor. You wrote a nice blurb for my recent book, The Darkest White, about Craig Kelly, and that's was pretty cool. And I know that you have so much going on, and to be able to take the time to do that, I know it's hard. It's it's you want to say yes to everybody, but you just can't. You can only you have to do your own research, and for you to take the time and do that and provide that was really, really cool. So thank you for that as well. And I would love to hear from anybody if they end up reading it. Any questions? I am an open book, and I do always respond to my readers. So.
Oh, that is awesome. And we'll have all that, all the contacts, how everybody can find you, your website, and all your social stuff will be in the show notes. People can find that pretty easily. Yeah. But
ericblehm.com is easy. And man, I could sure use a few of your Instagram followers.
Let's get them over there. Let's get them over there. Check it out.
I am Eric Blehm Official. I mean, it's funny because it's such a new thing for my generation of author, and you've done an amazing job of it. I'm inspired, but it's to me, it's a necessary evil. But it's the numbers, to get the big numbers and following for Instagram or Facebook or anything like that is it's hard to garner them. And
it's exhausting.
I don't work at it hard enough. And I think a lot of authors my age don't work hard enough at it.
Yeah, well, it's exhausting, but I didn't start when that didn't exist. So your first book came out before Instagram, before Facebook. So I think
I hand wrote letters to all of the bookstores, independent bookstores, when my book, the last season, where is it? When when the last season came out, which is that right there, I actually took time and I wrote a letter to every independent bookstore. I mean, I didn't handwrite each one, but I sent a letter to each one of them. And at that point, I remember the list, it was something like 5,000. I mean, it was a huge number. I mean, I spent a lot of money in stamps to send a letter to introducing myself. Hey, I'm a new author. This is my book, and da da da. And I followed up with that just like a year ago, and that number of independent bookstores is like a quarter what it was.
Oh, wow.
And so it's really has. And so I love that you say that in your little description of your book club, and I will echo that here. If you like to go into a bookstore and walk the aisles and hold a book, some of them have coffee houses, sip a coffee, sit in their worn couch and chair in the corner. So magical and so awesome, but you got to spread the money around. It's so easy to go to Amazon. We all do it. But if you want to have those bookstores in our towns, when I go on a trip, I don't bring a book with me. I buy one because most towns have a bookstore. And I always buy one somewhere and I pay full retail.
Oh, yeah, me
and
too.
I try and support them. And so I encourage, just like you do, I think if you like bookstores, buy books from them.
Yep. I try to get them from every bookstore. At the beginning, I was able to do it. And now some of the crowds have gotten so big that they bring you in and you do your thing, and then everything's closed down by the time you're leaving at like midnight or even 1 a.m, or even after it.
Right.
A couple books. I mean, it gets a little crazy, but anytime I possibly can, I buy from independent bookstores, and that's why I try to send people to my website for this book club, because they can get that 15% off. So it's an incentive to go there for that discount, and I don't get anything from it. It gets them the 15% off and allows you to help a local independent bookstore somewhere. So it does take a little more effort to do that than the Amazon easy button, but I try to get that discount in there so that people, it's incentive to go there and do that.
And keeping those, I mean, a book signing is a community event, and
It is.
I love the feeling. And for me, like you put the bill for, I mean, myself, I'll put the bill for a lot of it to go do this. And I feel like it's just important. You do that, and it just brings people together face to face. You get some of the best questions. I actually went to one of my book signings for the last season was in Seattle at Elliott Bay Bookstore when it was in the Pioneer Square area. It's not there anymore, and it was I was so excited because Seattle was like the perfect market for this book, and it was a Saturday and it was sunny, and apparently it had been raining for like 2 weeks straight. There was 2 people at my book signing.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing about it is 2 of those people, I talked for a few minutes, and then we went to a whiskey bar across the street, and I had a whiskey with them, and one of them I'm still in touch with today.
Nice. That's fantastic.
And this was like my first book, 18 years ago.
Yeah.
And, so those connections and everything that you get from those moments at the bookstores are so important. And the fact that you as well, I mean, that brings a good, one night of selling books like yours, or, one of my bigger books, if they sell 200 or 1,000 copies, I mean, that makes their month in some cases for a bookstore. So it's awesome. So good for you, and good on you for doing that. Cause I know, and you can only be creative so much. You start, luckily for Fearless, I always sign it, live fearless. And if it's somebody in the military, I ask them if they've served, and I say, I ask everybody, did you serve? And if they did, I say, thank you for your service, and I sign it. But it gets to the point where you just kind of have time to sign it.
Yeah, I try to, it gets a little, it's fantastic. I absolutely love it, going out and doing that, because that's the one time where you really get to look someone in the eye, shake their hand, and thank them.
Yes.
And I can do it on social as much as I can. Like at night before I go to bed, I try to hit that heart button, it's my way of saying thank you, or I'll type out thank you, sincerely appreciate it. Someone says they got the book or they watched the show or whatever they did. So I really try to do that, but it's different when you're there in person to get to shake that hand and really thank them, because it means so much. As we talked about back in 2013, when I mentioned that and you might be one of the first people that I told I was going to write a book, because I'm thinking 2013, I got out in 2016. I kept it pretty close to the vest in the SEAL teams. But I always knew from when I was a little kid that I was going to write thrillers one day.
You were 11 or 12 years old, I think, right?
I was, exactly. I was right around that 5th grade, 6th grade time frame. And I just knew that I would serve in my country in the military and then write thrillers, the same kind that I was reading back then, and continue to read and now write today. But I think you might be one of the first person that I felt, strange word to use, but like safe telling that to you, because I'm not going to tell anybody in the SEAL teams that I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think at that point you were still like kind of figuring it out. Like, I'm pretty sure I may have introduced you to my agent, possibly when you were looking. I can't remember exactly.
You might have. But I was a few years later that I'd finished the book. I hadn't even started writing then. I started in December of 2014 is when I wrote the first words, and then got it to an agent. Really, well, first I got it to Simon & Schuster, and then I got it to an agent, which was opposite way that most people go about doing it, or the way you're supposed to do it.
That's a great dilemma to have.
It was good. I didn't realize. Once again, going back to those how-to books, none of them are going to tell you to go the route that I did, but I hadn't read those books. I mean, I read On Writing, I read The Successful Novelists, I read the Stephen Pressfield books up to that point, and have continued to read those, One Sense on Creativity, but I hadn't read like a how to get published type book. But I don't think they would have told me to, but had I might have tried to get an agent first, and then I might still be looking for an agent today. So I'm kind of glad, I am very glad that I didn't read those kind of continue to research online or with books or magazine articles.
You did the SEAL approach.
I guess. Yeah, I just figured it out.
You did. Go the unconventional route.
Yeah, well, exactly. But you might be one of the first people, if not the first person, that I told that was something that I wanted to do.
Well, for all people and all stories to see, like, to have any professional jealousy is just, it's been awesome. Because I mean, I know, like, when I found out, that Chris Pratt was doing it and the movie was happening, of course I've been wanting to have it myself, but I also had my own limited success at that point. And for me, it's just been, I feel like I've been along for the ride, just watching from the background, just saying, holy crap. It's amazing, because what you've done is pretty much nothing less than pretty phenomenal. It's pretty phenomenal, especially, and your own story. I've told you, someday your story will be worth telling as well. So I hope you do at some point. Nobody wants to write their own thing. I think my favorite memoir title I've ever seen, it's called Enough About You.
Oh, whose is that? Which I think I've heard that.
I don't even know who did it, but I saw it
once. That's funny.
And I'm like, God, that's a great title.
Yeah.
And but at the same point, there's some people that stories, so down the road someday you should do it, and I hope you do, because you could inspire a lot of writers, I think, and to take that route. I think a lot of people, with the military books as well, a lot of the special ops, or the whole quiet warrior thing, are standoffish in telling some stories, and I respect that 100%. But when I ask most people that are in the special ops community, why did you want to do what you did? And most of them point me towards a book that they read at some point, or a movie. And so it's like, that's really what inspired people. There's that give and take between it. And so I think that there's certain ones. I have an old one of, I know that you collect the old SEAL books. Do you have Web-Footed Warriors?
Ooh, I don't have that one. I'm gonna write that down right now.
If you could see my upper shelf here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can hurt myself right now.
I'm gonna write that down. Web-Footed Warriors. That's strange that I don't have that one. Interesting. How old is that one? Oh, look at that. Oh wow, I'm going on eBay right after this. Oh, nice. I don't have that one.
Yep. And it was it's really cool. It's amazing. It's such a classic. It's old.
What year is it? What year did that come out?
The story of frogmen in the Navy, and it's old. Just one second.
I'm gonna find it. It's gonna be added to the collection post haste.
Story of frogmen in the Navy during World War II. Edward T. Higgins, in collaboration with Dean Phillips. And it's a first edition, although it's pretty trashed. Copyright 1955.
Wow. Okay. Wow. They were in early. Wow.
And this was given to me by, this is how we'll end this. I'd like to give homage and tribute to when I was a friend, that Navy doctor, who was a friend at a time in my life when my mom was dying of cancer. She'd been fighting cancer since I was 13. She passed away when I was 17. And these were the neighbors that we moved to next to when all this was going on in my world. And they were just a couple, Craig Cupp and Kathy Cupp. They were amazing. When I drove into the neighborhood the first time, there was a big banner up, and she was welcoming him back. He'd done his tour on a ship, basically. So it said, "Welcome home." At that point, whatever his title, I think he retired as like either a commander. You're a commander, right? We're a commander.
Lieutenant commander.
Is commander above captain?
Command. So it goes lieutenant commander is like a major, and then we have commander, which is like a lieutenant colonel, and then we have a captain, which is like a colonel.
Right. So he retired as a captain. So this is a look
06.
at people that this is a cool thing. But take a look at this. This is the first rendition of a Macintosh PowerBook 160 with the roller.
Nice.
And when I was going to college, I had to work my way through college, and I would have to go. At that point, computers were just coming into being, and there was a computer lab at San Diego State University, and I worked basically full time, and I always had to go to school to do my papers. And I was telling my friends, Captain Cupp and his wife, about this, and I went to dinner at their house one night, and they took me to the Apple store, and they bought me this.
No way.
In college, and they said, and at the time, I believe, I still remember it was high end at that time. I mean, back then, this would have been 1992, probably. I think it was like $1,500, maybe 2,000, a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they brought this to me, and they said, "We know it's money well spent, and you can pay us back when you get a job someday." And so, anyways, I've kept this all those years.
Wow.
It is like a brick. It's massive. It's the original. It's the first year they had MacBooks. And they supported me. They said, "I know you're going to go places." So even a cooler story, once I did get a job, these people were so awesome that I went to finally pay them back. I brought a check, whatever it was, to give it back to them after I got my first big job. And they stinking said, "Put it in an IRA." So that is the type of person that I feel like, the writer and in this book club, I thought it would be a cool story to share. And it's totally relevant because this Web-Footed Warriors was his neighbor. This guy was his neighbor when he grew up, and he had given this, and he gave it to me for my collection. So
no way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool story, huh?
I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm so cool you held on to that computer. I held on to all mine too, but it was for security reasons. Not for any story like that. I didn't want anything else out there that someone could get off the hard drive or something. I just have them stacked up in there. But but that's a much you have a much cooler
Well, this
story.
is one of the bookends I do in my writing class. I actually open it up like this, like at the bookend, and I stack books up across.
That's
this.
pretty cool.
And I use it like that, and I tell that story because they're in college at that point. I said, there are people like guardian angels out there in this light world looking out for you, and they saw something in me, and they're awesome. So thank you, Kathy and Craig. I'll dedicate it to that, and Adam and everybody. What a great talk.
Oh man, well, hey, thank you for taking the time and sharing all that, and everybody else who hasn't picked this up yet, add it to the library, gift it, especially to kids in junior high, high school, college, but it should be on every American's bookshelf right here, Fearless. And man, thank you so much, and appreciate your friendship and everything you've done for Adam.
Likewise. Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
This episode is brought to you by
Cry Havoc, from New York Times #1 bestselling author Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Rees thriller. Order now.
Watch a Cry Havoc teaser here, or watch another episode of the podcast here.